Hello and welcome to the Life Well Led podcast brought to you by Untapped. On this show, we have conversations aimed at exploring and uncovering the art of a life well led. I'm your host, John Elliott. And on this episode, we're going to be doing something a little bit new. Well, I say that. It's the second episode, so it's all pretty much new. Maybe better put, we're going to be doing something a little different from the first episode in that I'm going to have a co-host for this round. It'll be my good friend, Andrew Kamm, with whom I planted a church back in 2011. Together, we're going to be interviewing our mutual friend and former All-American Illini linebacker, J Leman. Back in college, the three of us used to talk shop about sports, leadership, performance, faith, etc. So you might think of this as a continuation of a conversation that started back in, let's call it 2004. We hope you enjoy listening as much as we enjoyed reconnecting. All right. Well, on today's episode of Life Well Led, I will be picking up a conversation that was left off in about 2005-ish between my good friend Andrew Kamm and former Illini All-American linebacker J Leman. We got to know each other back in our college days and have gotten to reconnect here and there since in different ways, but thought it would be fun to bring this group back together for a conversation today. So Andrew and Jay, want to thank you both for jumping on today.
Yeah, I love it. I mean, we get to reconnect mostly through travel basketball. You coach travel basketball. Cam's got a kid in travel basketball. Metamora, where Cam's based out, is a power in travel basketball. We're not going to be talking about travel basketball, but it's amazing what your friends, how you get wound back in the life of your friends to your kids' lives. And that's how we are kind of intertwined now.
Well, it's kind of wild to think here we are in 2024 talking about basketball power, Metamora. We were having this conversation back in 2005. We were talking about football, not basketball. So some things have changed in the last few decades.
Yeah, Metamora is definitely not what it used to be, but it's an exciting some exciting changes. And you get in the gym, it's toasty warm. You're not freezing out there on the football field. As a fan, frankly, it's much better. So.
Yeah, somewhere out there, Pat Ryan is just shaking his head, but that's okay. He's probably not listening. All right, so I actually want to begin the conversation by going back to where it all began for us back in our college days, and just to kind of clarify roles here. Think of Kamm as sort of the color commentator. Jay is our guest, so Jay, you're on the hot seat here, and Kamm's going to help me out. Here's my question for you. And this will require maybe a little bit of creativity and imagination. But I want you to imagine that 20-year-old J Leman is given a snapshot of 40-year-old J Leman or nearly 40-year-old J Leman. Are you 40 yet?
Yeah, I'm 39, so I'm getting there, yeah.
So almost 40-year-old J Leman. What do you think 20-year-old J Leman's reaction would be to the snapshot of the man in the life that we see here now?
That's a good question. I've accomplished a lot of stuff that I set my mind to go do. But I think if you're a driven individual, you're always asking yourself, is there more? I think I'm most proud that I've stayed true to my faith in Jesus. I've got an unbelievable family with my wife, Katie, and our 3 kids. And so I'm like, man, that's the, faith and families at the top. And then, we have our health. And so all those things are great. But as far as career goes, it's been an interesting ride. I would say, hey, 20-year-old Jay, you never really made it in the NFL, and it worked out okay, even though that you had kind of pinned everything on. And you just got out there and started selling stuff afterwards, even if it was, you didn't know what you were doing, and just kind of took shots. And the more shots you take, the more shots you make. And so I guess that's what I would kind of tell them at this point. Now, the big things you got right, there's definitely things you could always improve on, but don't really have any regrets because I think you learn as you go, and that's what shapes who you are. And I think if you're doing something from a good moral perspective that's in line with your faith and who your values are, we can only see so far ahead. And I think God knows that too. It's like we don't know exactly what the future holds. We can only make the best decision that we have in this present moment. And so I don't have any regrets with it, but that's probably what I would tell them.
Okay, so you'd be looking ahead and feeling good about the faith piece being in place, the family piece being in place.
Yeah, I mean,
And
I would. I mean, I think, but if you're driven, and Andy Kamm could talk to this as well, and you could talk about this. I think that you always are feeling, man, you always kind of feel a little bit behind. Like I always feel like, man, I should probably be farther along than I am, and that's sometimes to my detriment, and not being grateful for all the great things that have happened in my life, but also just I think that's what drives you. I don't think we're ever complacent. I don't think we ever believe we've arrived yet. There's always someone doing it better. There's always somebody doing it a smarter way. And I think you have to be committed to be a lifelong learner. And if you're like me, I get bored after doing something for 4 or 5 years. So I'm always asking kind of what's next. Is that a good thing or a healthy thing? I don't know. I think it depends on your personality.
Jay, you mentioned this question. I'm just curious to hear how you're answering it now or have been answering it recently. You asked, the driven person is always asking, is there more?
Sure.
And I take it you're asking yourself that question on a regular basis and ignoring it
Sure.
at times just to get it out of your way. But when you're stuck to it, you stick to it and have to answer that question. How are you answering it? What are you saying?
Well, I think first and foremost, you always have to cover the providing piece for your family first and foremost. So we can have all these dreams of what you want to do, but the bills come every month. There's a mortgage every month. And so my biggest thing is that's like numero uno is I'm here to provide and do that. I can say that I want to do all these things, but if there's not an economical path to necessarily do that, I don't think that's necessarily the wisest thing to do. I think we have Cinderella stories that we hear about, Kamm, that, people sold everything and did this and moved away and made it big. But for everyone that there's probably 95 that just completely failed and fell on their face. And so for me, I believe I'm a pretty high risk taking person, but when it comes to, there's a baseline of financial provision that I have to do, that I have to provide. And so that's kind of number one. I think once you get beyond that and say, okay, I feel really comfortable that based on the activities I'm doing, I can provide for my family. That's where it allows you to dream a little bit. And I think for me, it's always been a challenge to raise up teams and delegate. I think that's very hard to do and scale. I think I've been able to do that in some areas of my life, and I've failed miserably in other areas of my life to kind of get away from the trading hours for dollars trap. Not necessarily a trap, but just a way of life. And so, yeah, I mean, that's kind of where I'm at. Is like, I want to take care of the family first, but yeah, I'm always thinking, how can I scale this to even bigger and broader, pastures where I could, have more value and give more valuable service to people.
Can you dial in on that? You said you in some areas you've built up that team and delegated and it's gone well, and in others not so well. Give me an example of both. Where is it clicking? Where is it not?
Yeah, I would say that I have found in my life I'm pretty horrible at most things and good at just a few things. I'm pretty good at selling a product or service. I'm decent at recruiting or motivating people into my business, and those are where it kind of stops. I don't think I'm a great trainer of people. I can recruit you in. I'm not sure I could train you up to do what I do. Okay. I also found out real quick in real estate was what I do. I'm a horrible property manager. I'm a horrible general contractor. Those details, those minutiae just kill me. And so what I've had to do is like, okay, I need to contract out somebody that does all of my property management, that does everything for me. And that's worked very well in a contractor world. Look, we have a defined relationship. You're going to do this. I don't want to get any calls. I will pay you a fee. The same goes with accounting and finance and numbers. I can understand the big picture, but I don't want to be responsible for my K-1s or tax returns or any of that stuff. I'm going to farm that out. The same for my attorneys. So when I talk about property management, legal, and my taxes, I have realized, man, I am way over my skis in that area. So I've done very well at farming that out. Never think about it. I never have a crunch time at tax time. I never have a legal question where I'm trying to figure out myself. I have people for that. I think where I've really struggled is kind of building sales teams that are very productive. I think that's where I've really the training and duplication of sales professionals to try to help you scale, whether that be in real estate or something else, has been a shortcoming of mine. I can catch them, I just can't train them. And so I think I've been looking for someone who could help me do that on a deeper, broader level.
Here's my follow-up question there. You talk about always challenging yourself with what's next and wanting to grow and scale. I think all three of us on this call have that impulse within us.
Sure.
But something I wrestle with there, and I'm guessing you guys do too, is, we're ambitious, right? We want to take that next step. We want to have more influence. We want to sort of leave it all in the field in terms of our gifts and the value we're able to add to the world. But we're also wanting to take care of business at home base.
Sure.
With wife and kids and just the day-to-day grind. And I say that in a good way of raising our kids, being present in their lives, and, first and foremost, training up that team.
Sure.
Right. Which I think we would all say is our most important team. And so I'm curious, Jay, how you have navigated that tension of leaving the cave and doing bigger and better things as you do, but also, not at the expense of what you're trying to do inside the cave with your family.
I think that's a really good question. And to your point about never being satisfied, I just believe that God has made us to have expanding vision. And the 20-year-old Jay never had a vision for how big he could be, necessarily in business or in life in certain different categories. And as you go, every year it seems like God's expanding your vision that you can expect and believe for more. And so, but how do you keep family first? I think first and foremost, I'm a huge believer in you got to have time with your kids. Like, I know it sounds simple, but like, I want to eat with my kids as many meals as possible. Breakfast, lunch, dinner. Lunch is tricky during school year, obviously, and during some of the summer camps and stuff. But I want to be home with them, and I want to have dinner with them, and I want to put them. So I want to wake them up, have breakfast with them. I want to have dinner with them, and put them to bed. I think that's important, and I want to try to have, one thing I was really blessed with was that I had a dad that made a concerted effort to play sports with me. His father never played sports with him, and he made a concerted effort to play sports with me, and I try to do that with my kids. That's the way I connect with him. And then thirdly, I think it is being plugged into, a local church. I think that's so important. Sundays are busy. There's travel schedules, but Sunday and a weekly small group and connecting with individuals as well. I think it's just so important for kids and for us to say, this is a value, and we're going to make time for it. And then fourth, is the best way you can love your kids is to love your wife and show them and model that and put that first. So in order to make all that stuff happen, I have chosen a job that is not directly related to my time. It is more based on commission, and I'm not a wage earner. And so since I got out of football, I've always worked on commission, and I've really enjoyed that. Because I believe, although it's not total time freedom, and sometimes you have to do something at certain times, I believe it allows you, if you're good at it, to earn more with less time put in. Not necessarily less effort, but you have that leverage of the sales if you can do that. So that's allowed me to really spend the time I want with my family.
Cool. You mentioned your father and sports. I'm wondering if there isn't a question that my co-host here might want to ask about a rumored unpublished manuscript floating around out there about this topic.
Yeah, so disclosure to the audience, I worked with Jay's dad, years ago now, 20 years ago, got to spend a year as an intern under Hap. And frankly, is one of the most influential people in my life, especially for the amount of time we spent together. It wasn't that long. But it had a really big impact on on my journey. And he mentioned to me once, and it may have been off the cuff, Jay. I wonder if you even know about this, but it's always intrigued me. And now that I have my own kids, I'm dying to get my hands on it. He had mentioned that he had written a book, an unpublished book on titled something to the effect, as I remember it, How to Raise Athletic Kids.
He's written a lot of books in his head. He's never actually written. He's written a lot of books in his head. He believed he had a whole system, for it. Because his kids weren't that athletic naturally. They were decent. They certainly weren't freaks of nature or anything.
Right.
But he had a whole system in which, some of his more famous things is he would not ask for any presents at all at birthdays or Father's Day. All he would ask his kids to do is write them on a sheet of paper that they would dribble the basketball 15 minutes a day, or they would lift weights 4 days a week. He said, that would bring me so much more joy than any gift that you got me, because you're actually working on yourself. What's interesting is he considered himself a basketball expert. Now, I don't know how playing at Eureka High can make you a basketball expert, but he considered himself really good. What's so interesting to me is that every one of his kids ended up playing a college sport, other than one who didn't play college sports. I have five kids in my family. All of my siblings played a college sport except one, and everybody played a college sport other than basketball. And I think that's because he was so hard to go and play a junior high or high school game with him in the stands. He was just one of those dads that, had signals like, you probably can't see this, but he would do the drive signal if you needed to drive. He would do the shoot signal. He would do the elbow signal if you needed to be tougher. And it kind of turned us kids off to that or being 6 foot and not that fast turned us off from basketball, one of the two. And so he didn't know much about football, right? And the only advice that he's ever given me before a football game was, just do me one favor, go out there and hit some. And it was kind of a joke, right? Because I was like, why does he always say that? I realized, he doesn't know any better. Like, he doesn't even know the game he's watching. Right?
That's all he's got.
And it kind of let us, I think, kids just play a lot more free and not be under the pressure of that. So I think that was huge.
Interesting. Well, that leads us into another topic we wanted to dig into a little bit. Obviously, most people who are listening, when they hear J Leman, they think, Illini football player, you were an All-American your senior year, led the team to a Rose Bowl. Those days are behind you now, and you spend the bulk of your time, as we've been talking about, as a dad, husband, very involved in real estate. But we're curious, when you think about your time competing in football, what are some of the most significant ways those experiences have shaped you now as you live and lead in some of these other roles? Like, how are you the way you are as a result of those days competing the way you competed with football?
Yeah, I think first and foremost, delayed gratification is such a muscle that needs to be built. And, you play on a football team, you come in as kind of an average, below average recruit and on a very bad football team. And you don't win much at all. Your first 4 years, you win 8 games. And so it's like, okay, is this worth it? But so I think delayed gratification and working towards a goal that may or may not happen, that you think can happen, and, able to turn a program around and go to the Rose Bowl and get some accolades yourself. So I think delayed gratification is something that taught me you don't have to be the most gifted at something to be great at something. Like, there are way more gifted football players out there than me that did not have the career that I had. There are also, people that I'm more gifted than that had a better career than me, I would say. So, you don't have to be the most gifted to be great. So I think that's something that helps. I think it really helps your mental toughness. I mean, it's so hard to teach young players. And I know you guys have all coached young athletes, and I'm coaching youth football now and have coached youth sports. And I just go through, when I see when mistakes happen, it's just very difficult for a young athlete. It's very difficult for them to just put that away. I mean, if there's one thing that I could teach a guy, like, don't live in the glory of a great play or the guilt of a bad play, just play the next play. And if I could have learned that sooner, man, I would have been so much better off. And so I think sports really helps you with that. It also helped me not to be afraid of rejection in sales. When you get cut 7 times in the NFL and somebody tells you you're not good enough, you kind of stop fearing that somebody's going to tell you no. So, about something. So I think it's helped me on a lot of different levels, but those are probably the ones that kind of come to mind first.
Jay, I want to broaden that out. All of that resonates with me, and I've just observed it really primarily through some family connections that played professional baseball and their network of friends.
Mm-hmm.
It seems like those guys, the guys I'm talking about, none of them made it to the big leagues, but a lot of them have gone on to have really successful sales careers, maybe in particular, kind of commission-based type work. Do you think there's something kind of inherent from those experiences that isn't just true about you and for your experience, but just generally true about those high-level athletes that maybe played beyond, kind of the recreational high school level?
Yeah, and I think it's, I put the caveat in there, that's the high-level athletes that maybe aren't the most talented, that really had to work for something, that had to really grind it out to figure out a way. Those seem to be the most successful afterwards. From what I can track, it's probably anecdotal what I'm saying, but I think it does a couple things. I think the competition of sales, right? The thrill of victory or defeat, the ability to go to win something, to win as far as a championship or a commission or a sale or a promotion. I think that drives athletes. I also think that sales is just it's a skill and input game, right? So you're building your skills, but just also you could be the most skilled guy, but never put in the work or the calls or the meetings or whatever you need to do. And so it has those two things, which is exactly what sports have. Sports have skill, but they also have the input. Like, I got to practice this to be this, and I got to take reps at something to be good at something. And so I think that's a very, very good, very good marriage there. I also think that sports rewards routine. Great athletes have phenomenal routines and patterns and everything else that they do on a weekly basis. Sales rewards a routine. And I think it drives people to get into that field, because like, if I do the, X and plus Y, then it's going to equal Z. And I think that's helpful to those athletes that have a mindset like that.
Yeah. Clear scoreboard.
Jay, I don't get it. How are you not good at training people? You got all kinds of great one-liners here. This is gold.
Well, so this is where I grew up in the college football world, where I would say probably more old school than it was what the new school coaches are now. And it was kind of like this: listen, if you don't get it, if you don't know what you're doing, we'll get somebody else in here that will do it. Or, you made a mistake. I mean, you go and watch film and be totally, evaluated and very, very rough. There's no beating around the bush. This is to make you better. We're trying to get better. And so it's kind of a military concept. I even had one coach say to me, this sounds crazy. He said this to the whole team. He said, inside these 4 walls, this is not a democracy. This is a dictatorship, and you will do what I say to do. And so that's kind of the culture you grow up in. And so these athletes like me are trained in that. Now, when you get out into the real world, and they got into the multi-level marketing, network marketing space, whatever one you call it, pyramid schemes, some people derogatorily call it that. When I got into it and I tried to train a team in that, the first 6 to 12 months, I could recruit anybody. I could sell on customers, but I would talk to them like a college football coach would talk to them. And if you have not been in that environment and you get talked to like that by somebody, wow, you're not going to keep people that long, right? So I was burning through people because the leadership that had been modeled to me in the culture that I was raised of 17 years of padded football was something completely different when I was trying to help salespeople. And then I realized too, I was very impatient with people, and I still am impatient as far as, why can't they just get it? Why can't they just go and get the job done? And that's a shortcoming of me, right? I'm a big ready, fire, aim guy. Like, I don't need to know, like, aim. Like, I'm invested in a property. If it hits these things, it's good enough. I don't need to break down every last thing about it, right? If I'm need to go make some sales, okay, this ain't rocket science. We need to make a couple calls, and we need to make, $10,000 this month. By the end of the month, how are we going to do it? So like, just go talk to people. Now, is there smarter ways to do it? And John, I'm sure you can break it down with your consulting and help me with that. But I'm not saying I'm the most efficient, but when we need to get something done, we'll get it done. I think I think this, spite is a strong word, but I think I've come to realize that many people just aren't like that. And I lose patience pretty quick.
Yeah. What I'm hearing there is you have a strong bias for action and execution, and you tend to work really well with folks who share that and are figuring out how to work well with folks maybe for whom that's not their bent.
Yeah, I just really want people to do their job. I got a guy like putting in some plants for me around this landscaping. Dude, I don't care. Like, whatever Katie, my wife, wants, just put them in the ground. Like, go ahead. I don't need any more questions asked of me. Like, just go do your job. Like, I'm not here to do. I'm not a general manager. I'm paying you to do this. I don't even want to be bothered by it. So that's kind of how I get with stuff. And Kamm probably works with a lot of guys like that when he's building a project. I mean, I'm sure there's guys on both sides of the spectrum, but I just am. I'm a guy like, listen, I'm hiring you to do a job. Unless I definitely need to have I don't really want to talk about it. I don't really want to think about it. So I'd be a guy too, if my wife would let me. I'd wear the same thing every day. I just don't care. Like, I don't care. I would eat the same thing every day mostly. I'm just kind of a weird, and my wife tells me all the time, there's not really a lot of people like me, because I'm just like, okay, I don't want stuff to get in my bandwidth of different things. And I can not do more than one thing at one time. Like, I can only do one thing. Like, I can't do multiple things. I'm very, myopic on one thing, much to my detriment on some things. So just kind of realizing I'm really weak in doing multitasking things.
So one of the themes I'm hearing as we talk here is that, as you've gotten older, you've learned some things about yourself, some things you're really good at, some things and people you struggle with. I'm curious, and I suppose it's a little bit case by case probably, but in general, are you the type of person who's just double and triple down on my strengths and not worry as much about my weaknesses? Or are you more, no, I gotta get better at this stuff. I gotta become more patient. I gotta become better at training people. Which direction do you kind of lean on that?
See, I think in sports, it's different. I think you have to work on your weaknesses. I wasn't fast, so I was always trying to get more flexible and fast. And I was plenty strong enough. Hey, Andy Kamm actually came to my room one time, and he challenged me on this. He saw my board where I was tracking my lifting and running. He probably doesn't remember this. And he said, you have more lifts on here than runs. What one are you trying to get better at? And I said, well, running, so he kind of called me out on that. I've always remembered that conversation because it kind of stung. I played it off like I was doing the right thing, but in my secret head, I was thinking, okay, I'm not doing the right thing. So I think in sports, yeah, in order to play in the NFL, man, you better be able to. I was never able to do this. You better be able to guard the slot in space and not just tackle people between the tackles. I wasn't able to do that. Therefore, I got cut 7 times and couldn't make a football team. But I believe in business, it can be way more niche-y. Listen, I'm really good at calling people and selling stuff. I really hate the paperwork aspect of it. We could hire that out. I hate managing property, so I can hire that out. So I believe it was John Maxwell who said this. I'm sure other people said this is, don't learn to shake with your left hand, shake with your right hand. Have somebody else shake with the left hand who's left-handed, and basically saying work with your strengths. And I basically just doubled down on my strengths. I know I am who I am. And sometimes I think about, maybe I should be awakened more and try to get in touch with this side of me and that side of me. And maybe I should grow more. And I think there's part of that, but there's also part of that that's just unproductive. So, that's just kind of what I think. That doesn't mean it's necessarily true. But I definitely am one of those people that would benefit from having a COO, a chief operations officer for the details. And I could just be more the chief marketing and sales guy. That's kind of what I see myself as.
Yeah, I want to lean into that, Jay. Really going back to what you said in an opening statement, that question is there more? As you talk about your business and the things you're facing, it seems like you're your own bottleneck. Yeah, you're doing great at subbing out what can be subbed out, farming out, property management and general contracting, all that stuff. But you're only going to be able to sell as much as you sell, and you're really good at it. It's your strength. You love doing it. But as you think, you're asking yourself, is there something more? You're wanting to do 10 times as the sales you're doing without
Sure.
infringing on your family commitments, but you suck at training. You burn people out. So what does it look like? How are you going to get there? Is it just finding the right COO? What's keeping you from getting where you want to go?
That's a good question. I was told
This is
to
getting
read
hard hitting here. I like it.
by John. I like it. I like it. I was told by John Elliott to read Who Not How, that book by Dan Martell. Is it Dan Martell?
Solving.
And that's good. It's a good book. And was I wrong? Is it somebody else? Who was it?
No, you got Dan Sullivan.
Dan Sullivan. There's another Sullivan. Yeah, so I like that. So I've actually been in talks with someone. Like I'm at the point where I'm like, okay, on the residential real estate time, I want somebody to kind of take all over that. So I'm actually in talks with an agent to do all the residential stuff for me at some point, and also help me with the training aspect and also with some of the admin aspects. So that the wheels are turning in that, because I've kind of gotten to the point where I'm sick of it. God speaks to me a lot of ways. One of the ways he speaks to me is wherever I have energy, I believe that's where God's leading me. I've always been successful when I've had energy behind something. I believe that's the wind of the Holy Spirit, the grace, whatever you want to call it, of God. You can name it different things, but it's that mojo, that magic that happens when you got energy behind something to go after and build something, because it takes tremendous amount of energy to create momentum and build something. And unless you're excited or have energy about it, you will never be able to do that. You will be average. You could provide, but you won't be excited. So those things that I just talked about, some of the residential stuff and some of the admin and training people, those don't excite me, but I've done those for a long time. One, out of necessity, then two, out of like, I don't know how to actually get past this bottleneck. And three, it's like, okay, now I actually have to take time and be strategic, not just be, oh, there's another sale to make. Let's make a sale. Because it's more money today, rather than being strategic to make more money, with less time in, 1, 2, 3 years. So I'm working on it.
So
I don't
Jay,
think I'm
it
there
seems
yet. That's definitely a muscle that I need to work. When you like the first time you work, I always had really small calves, like chicken legs. And so like I always tried to work my calves really hard. I felt like that would like get they never got bigger. Okay. But it's like, the point is like that's a spoiler alert. The point is that, being strategic, slowing down, making a plan, doing all those, that's a muscle that I really have to work, because there's always an urgency in me that I'm like, where's the next sale? And that's what gets me a high. The strategic stuff, like you were telling me like, hey, listen, I'm going to lock you in a room for 72 hours and do nothing but strategic planning or admin stuff. That sounds like literal hell on earth. Like that must be hell. Like, we don't know exactly what hell's like. For me, that would be hell. Like doing busy work, like all day, every day. Like that just, please. I know for other people, hell would probably be cold calling or talking to people or doing whatever.
Yep.
And they're terrifying. But, yes. So that's why I need to build that muscle. Hopefully it grows, and my calves never did, but hopefully this one grows.
I think what J Leman just told me is that for work, I take people into hell.
It would be hell to do what you do, your job, but I'm glad you do it. You know that, is it Rodney Atkins? If you're going through hell, keep on going. You might get out before the devil even knows you're there. You can just tell yourself that. It used to be my ringtone. Back when we had ringtones, that used to be my ringtone. I don't know why I had that. I didn't think I would go through hell, but it was a ringtone. You young bucks that listen to this don't even know what a ringtone is. I mean, shoot, but everything just vibrates all the time. But that was a ringtone. I think I paid $6.99 for it. That was a splurge that was uncharacteristic for me.
You're in a unique position, Jay. I'm thinking about one of Patrick Lencioni's fables. Maybe it was in the Ideal Team Player, where this great salesman. I don't know the exact the story, but you
I like Lencioni. I like Lencioni. He's a good author.
Well, I'm not so much thinking about the. Well, I guess it is the concept of the humble, hungry, smart team member. You're the founder of a company, and so it's expected that you're going to be the CEO in your company, and maybe in some way you are, but you're really best positioned and best gifted as the chief sales officer or marketing guy.
Yeah.
That's leaning into your gift, but it takes some humility. What does it mean to give the strategic planning of your company over to a team that can free you to do the things that you do really well and get energy from, and creating a space for someone else to get energy the things that they're doing to maximize your dollars so they go further. That's rare. I mean, maybe not in your world so much, maybe not in real estate so much, but
yeah, maybe when I get farther down the road that to that actual point, of like, okay, we were executing that will be like that. But it's just what is the best use of my time? And for me, it's going out there and selling or finding deals or marketing and creating content. That seems to be driving the leads. It seems like everybody is desperate for leads. So if you can provide leads, you can be a huge resource to people, and people will gladly trade and do mind-numbing administrative work if you give them leads. And so leads is a good currency to have in business because a lot of people like to take that currency.
Yeah.
So we've kind of hit on this topic of energy here in some recent conversation, and that's actually a place we wanted to go. And I think something a lot of people associate with you, right? When they think J Leman, they think football player, and they think just energetic, passionate dude.
Sure.
In terms of not just football, but whether it's a Dick Van Dyke commercial or posting about real estate on social media, there's just almost always this great fervor there. So 2-part question here, and you can take them one at a time. Where does that come from? Is that just a nature thing where you sort of came out of the womb and that's Jay and you've just been fired up from birth? Or was that something that was instilled in you, taught to you, cultivated in you? Where does that come from? And then the follow-up question there is, what about the days when you don't feel it? And I got to believe there are those days where you just get up and it's like, man, it's going to be hard to do the J Leman thing today. Like, do you feel freedom to not be that way at times with certain people, or is it just always there? So would love to hear you expound on both those points.
I think that's 2 really good questions. Number one is where does it come from? One, I do believe that God's created me a certain way. So I believe there is some of that. I was born that way. I was 4th out of 5 kids. The youngest was the favorite, and then there was a girl right in the middle, and she was the favorite too. So I was the 4th, and nobody cared about me. They claim now that I'm the favorite child. That didn't happen until I was like 20. There's video stuff of home videos of me like trying to get attention from people. Nobody actually paid attention to me. My mom actually, she homeschooled us all through 4th grade, but she sent my youngest son off, my youngest brother off to kindergarten in public school just so she could have 1 year with me in 4th grade, because she thought that God said that you've ignored Jay, you really need to have some time with him, right? So I never really had a ton of people paying attention to me. So maybe that was part of it. Number 2 is I realized really quick, especially in sports, I wasn't good enough not to be intense. Like there's guys out there that can go and like, dude, they can be, chilling and go out and drop 30 points on the basketball court and have 100 yards rushing or 15 tackles. Like there's guys that can do that. I wasn't gifted with that ability, but if I was intense and played hard, and my coaches used to say, I need everybody to play with a sense of urgency. I have never known what that's meant in my life until I coach youth football, and I see the lack of urgency in young football players, like run the line, have good body language, no bad body language penalties, which I give bad body language penalties to all of my team all the time. It's just like, it just drives me absolutely crazy. And so for me, I couldn't not afford to be intense. I think that was a big thing, is I needed to be intense. And so is there days where I don't feel like being that way? Yeah, I think I've become more measured, and I think I've become, I can use it when I want to use it. I can do it when I don't want to do it. But I think for me, I always want to focus on what are the actions today that are going to move me forward. One thing I think that's unique about me is a lot of people write vision statements and goals. And I will tell you, I used to do that. One day I was reading that out loud. It was very specific. I was going to make X amount of money and be this and be that and grow this and that. And I just felt the Holy Spirit convict me and say, whose kingdom are you building? And it just hit me like a shot to the heart that day. And I'm not against people writing goals or visions or anything, but I was kind of trying to get my energy kind of from this vision that I was kind of creating this kingdom for myself. And to this day, I haven't gotten to the point where I feel good to write down a vision or goals 8 years later. And I've just focused on what are the actions today and the attitude today that I have to do to get in the general direction of where I'm headed. Now, whether that's good or not, I don't know. I just know that's what feels right in my spirit for this stage in my life. I'm not saying I'm never going to write a goal down or never going to write a vision down, but I want to do that. And so that's what helps me have the proper amount of energy every day, is what are the actions I got to do to move forward, and learning when to use the energy and when to pull back, especially in sales conversation. I think it's very important. You can't overpower people. You have to know their personality. You have to listen. You have to ask more questions than statements. And there's so many nuances in there. You can always continue to get better. Now, that was a long, rambling monologue, but hopefully it answered your question.
You mostly did. I if I can probe just a little deeper, though, because I really do think people would be interested in this. Like, what does it look or sound like for J Leman to be discouraged? Like, you wake up on a day, not just, I'm not peak J, but it's like, man, I'm down. I didn't get something done.
Well,
something didn't turn out how I hoped. Like, what is that? Take us inside of that, if you're willing.
Well, I mean, on a very practical level, I wasn't feeling good this morning. I was just like, I don't feel good. I kind of had a cold coming on. I had a cold kind of peaking, cold peaks. It's like, my nose doesn't feel great. I don't feel good. But I used to have a college football coach. He used to say this: you guys just lost by 50. Your mom doesn't love you and your girlfriend broke up with you and you're in pain and hurt. I got news for you. Nobody cares. Nobody cares. Nobody's thinking about you. Number one, nobody's thinking about you. Nobody's thinking about your problems. So I always say, I'm always thinking about my problems. Nobody cares. John and Kamm have a podcast to do, and I'm going to do that with them. So number one, I try not to feel sorry for myself. My mom would tell you that I did feel sorry for myself when I was young a lot, and she had to cast out a spirit of self-pity over me many, many times. Now, if you know my mom, you may laugh in hearing that. You may have no context for that, but for what I just said. But she would say, I got to cast out the spirit of self-pity in Jay, because I would get really, really down on myself. Nobody loves me. Only person that loves me is Jesus and mom and blah, blah, blah. And, kind of work myself up. But man, I've really had to fight that in my life of getting discouraged. I was discouraged many times at Illinois and in sports and in business. But at the end of the day, I think discouragement, you hear the voice of God clear a lot of times in discouragement than you do in success. And I've always been able to lean into that and say, okay, God, what are you saying right here? What does it look like? And I can always be grateful for, hey, I'm healthy, got a great family, got a lot of things going on. There's other sales, right? I think if you have an enormous amount of activity, it kind of stems away any anxiety that you would have about failure, because you're like, if I just keep on doing these actions, I'll be okay. But yes, there's moments of grief. There's moments of discouragement. All of that happens, but that doesn't have to define how I show up for you or Kamm or anyone else in my life. I can show up and be honest with people about that too, but it doesn't have to affect on what I do in my daily actions.
Well, I appreciate you you reflecting there a bit with us. It's something I've thought a lot about, as very much like you, and I think Kamm would agree, just bias towards action, next play mentality. Doesn't do any good to waste emotional energy on something that's already done. So, like, I think all three of us are operating out of the same playbook there. I think as I've gotten older and have experienced some real hurts and disappointments, though, I've had to wrestle with what is, there are biblical categories for lament and grief, and what does
Sure.
it look like to, in a healthy way, lean into that at the right time, but then also get back to work at the appropriate time. And I certainly haven't sorted all that out, but that's just something that I wrestle
I
with, and so I appreciate you sharing a little
yeah,
bit how you wrestle with that.
I think lament and grief, and it's something that you grow into as you experience that in your life. I also think just the whole concept of Sabbath. I think Sabbath is there and grief is there and lament is there, kind of all together. How do you rest? How do you take a break? How do you say this didn't
Yeah,
actually work out? Okay, God, what are you saying in this moment? I think that takes some maturity to do. And I guess it's not bad to step back. Um, but I love what Jim Rohn says. Jim Rohn, passed away probably 15 years ago, but he was a legend in the network marketing communities and in sales community. And Jim Rohn, that's Jim Rohn, Jim Rohn, not Jim
okay, this
Rohn.
isn't Jim Rome is burning.
No, Jim Rohn, and he's got
I
some
was
great
like,
stuff. He's up.
where are we headed next?
No, he's got some great stuff. He's
He's still
like a
alive, by
Zig
the way,
Ziglar.
right?
Yes, Jim Rome, as in Rome is burning, is still alive, but Jim Rohn,
Oh, phew,
Orhn, is not. He's a legend in the
gotcha.
network marketing community, and he says this. He says, the same wind blows on us all. The same wind of success, the same wind of tragedy, the same wind of things not going our way. But it's not the wind that determines our course, it's the set of the sail. What is the set of your sail,
Hmm.
in your life? Is it plumb to your faith in Jesus? Is it plumb to something else? I think that determines your course. And so bad things happen to everybody. And much of this life is suffering, and it is hard, and it's not easy. And there's a lot that's not understood. But I never have gotten to the point, or maybe I just haven't had that big a tragedy where I've said, like, I've got to 100% step back myself and not do anything for them. I'm sure there are times, or maybe a time in my life where that happens. I haven't necessarily gotten to that point in my life. And I'm always asking myself, is that because I lack emotional awareness and intelligence, or just that, as the young bucks say, I'm built different? I don't know. So I ask myself these things. All I know is I probably don't know as much as I think I know, and so that kind of scares me. As Mark Twain said, it's not what I don't know that scares me, what I know that just ain't so. That terrifies me.
It makes me curious. What thoughts your wife might have if she was the fourth member of this conversation right now. What would she be saying at this point?
She would probably just be laughing and say that's Jay, number one. But number two, she'd probably have a different opinion of it. I mean, she looks at stuff, definitely through a different lens, and different as in not bad, but as in good and unique. And that's taken me a long time too to figure out in marriage, is like, okay, God's given me a helper, God's given me a partner. How do we honor each other? And we go through. We're very different in how we problem solve and how we go about things and how we talk to people and being direct or indirect. But at the end of the day, there's just so much wisdom there. So she would probably give you a totally different insight of what I'm saying.
I think it's interesting, or at least I'm curious in that as you're talking about grief and lament, you brought up the Sabbath, and in my experience, the Christian life really it is a pattern of death and resurrection, built on the gospel. And I guess I'm thinking of the Sabbath as death right now, where there's and relating it to the rest of sleep. And so, Jay, confirm for the listeners that you do sleep most nights, because some would probably doubt it.
No, yeah, I
But
do, not probably not enough, but I do sleep.
so you lay down every night and rest, and then every morning you rise and you burst forth with uh, you know a unique amount of energy. Uh, you say built different, for certain, but I think there is, as you alluded to in that, grief, sorrow, lament, whatever. There's a pattern of death and resurrection of that, and that death isn't a place we stay. I think is my point in that.
Yeah.
That Sabbath isn't even a place we stay. We rise up out of that, and are called to good work. And
That's good.
yeah,
I like that. I like that. I have never really had thought about that. Our life is a pattern of death and resurrection through kind of our pattern of our day, but it would make sense as an archetype for our life. But I hadn't thought about that. But you don't stay there, but you're always kind of going and moving on.
yeah. Well, I even think you had. I mean, and certainly all of us experience some kind of death, even if it is just on a daily basis. We rest at night, but you dreamed of being an NFL football player. I mean,
Sure.
when we were together in 2005, your whiteboard that didn't have enough running on it was still built around becoming an NFL linebacker.
Sure.
And that died 7 times over. It died.
Right.
But you didn't stay dead. You rose to something different and something better. Something better for the world that we didn't expect. You didn't expect.
Sure. Yeah. It's in regards to that, it's kind of like the seed that goes into the ground that has to die first, right? And then produces something that's way more rich, right? I think it's very hard in that moment. It is hard. You get cut 7 times, this happens, you're banged up, you're injured. But if you have a hope and you're like, okay, God's for me, is with me, and you just keep on taking action every day, even if it's a little action, and keep trying to figure out what's going on, you'll figure it out. And but I love that. I do love that metaphor of death and resurrection, because a lot of dreams do die, and then sometimes they get resurrected and whatnot. So sometimes they don't. Sometimes it resurrects something completely different.
Yeah. That's good, guys. Man, I'll be honest. I woke up today also feeling a little bit tired and sick and discouraged, and just thought, okay, this is going to be a day to sort of grind through. And I'm encouraged. I'm encouraged by what I'm hearing you guys share there. And
I've
I know
always
for me,
felt
I
like
got into a weird argument. What's that?
No, I don't want to cut you off, but it always helps me to get into, and no matter how bad I feel, if I get into action, it helps me. Like if I do something, I think sitting there is the worst. Like I always tell my kids, listen, having a cold and just sitting in class is the worst. What you need to do is go out and play sports. Like just go play sports, go do something. You'll forget about it, right? Go talk to somebody. Because I think we all, at least I feel this, I feel a cloud in the morning. Sometimes you don't feel good and you're tired. And you're like, man, is this life? I got to get up. And, I think I get up and go for a walk and I pray in the morning just to try to wake myself up and get the cobwebs out, right? So I think action helps with that. But I didn't mean to cut you off, John. Sorry about that. Go ahead. You had a weird conversation.
Just going to share a quick anecdote. I got into a strange debate a week ago with a member of my team. Weirdly, one of the most heated debates I've been in some time. And the topic was 5-year plans. And this person was sort of advocating for the value of them. And I just said over dinner at a work thing, I said, I think they're stupid. I have quit 5-year plans, 10-year plans, 20-year plans, because every time I've tried to do that, I haven't been anywhere close. Not anywhere close. You know, even just go 2-3 years out, I would have been wrong just about every time, you know, wildly wrong. And so I don't know if this is right or wrong, but I resonated with what you're saying in terms of goals, vision statements, where the older I get, the more I resonate with Israel in the wilderness. And it's just, all right, God, give me manna for today. Show me what faithfulness looks like today. Help me to be in tune with what you're up to today and how I can cooperate with that. And we'll get up tomorrow and we'll do it again.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, that's not the kind of thing that sells books probably. That's maybe not the kind of thing that makes people want to listen to a podcast. I don't know. We'll find out. But, yeah, for whatever it's worth, the older I get, that's the mentality I have more and more. And so I was strangely encouraged, I guess, to hear you share something similar.
Yeah, you know, for me, it has just struck me to the heart, and I have not been able to. People ask me, "What are your goals?" And I won't be able to tell them. I'm the one sales guy, realtor, you know, whatever. Doesn't have a goal. What's your vision? I just have not felt freedom in my spirit, and I'm not saying it's never going to happen, to really draw out what that is, because what I found in myself is that I was building a kingdom unto myself when I really got into it deep. And wealth and riches and property and all those things are not bad, but I just felt like I was kind of got into that. I was influenced by that whole personal development culture that takes biblical principles and takes Christ out of it, right? And you have to be very careful of that, because those principles do work. But God that gives us wealth with no sorrow with it. And I just think there's a lot of sorrow if you take Christ out of it. And I want to be very, very careful of that. So yeah, it's something that it's refreshing for me to hear that too, that you're like, okay, you know, I don't have this big thing, because, you know, I would think on the outside looking in, certainly a consultant would tell me to do that. But maybe I'm wrong.
18 years ago, I was working with a guy who cautioned me that people make plans a year in advance. They make 3-year plans and 5-year plans. But the truth of the matter is, the best predictors at best do 6 months. Usually it's 3.
Mm-hmm.
Really?
And that came from J Leman. And I've walked with that in my mind for my whole adult life. That I probably, if I could be as smart as Hap, I could plan 6 months out, and that's it.
Wait, he would love. I'm going to send him this podcast because he's going to love to hear you just tune his horn right here. He also believes in his ABC theory, where there's point A and you're on your way to point B because you think that's what God wants you to do. But on your way to point B and being active and walking toward point B, C pops up and you realize in like a God moment, oh, this is really the direction I need to go. Like I thought I wanted to be this, but now I see this has a piece of it, but this is really what I want to. And he claims that most people find their purpose in the ABC kind of theory of going to where you think you're going, and then there will be a slight deviation, maybe a left turn, maybe a U-turn, but you end up at C, and C was where God wanted you all around the whole time, and it's where you have the most energy. And then you'll be there, and then you'll do another ABC thing, and you'll end up at C again, and that's kind of what happens. So cyclical as well.
Yeah. Rings true for me, for sure. All right. Well, Jay, Kamm, thank you so much for coming on today. This was not only a thought-provoking conversation, which I expected, but also, like I said, a deeply encouraging one. So appreciate you guys making time to be a part of it.
Yeah, a lot of fun. Thanks, guys, for inviting me on, and I hope that this is the first of many.
Jay, great being with you today, man.
Hey,
Love catching
awesome. Good to see you again.
Maybe we'll bring Hap on for round 2.
Bring Hap on for round 2. That'd be great. I'm going to bring Kamm on when he starts building me an apartment for me. He can be a guy that does all the work and I don't do anything. I can just there you go. He's that guy. He's totally that guy.
No.
Hey, I'll warn you. The next time we get on, we're going to be asking you, who's your COO?
Yeah, that's true.
Andy Kamm.
100%.
On the building side. But yes, please, hold me to
it. Andy Kaufman, if you're out there listening, this was not my intention when I arranged for this interview. All right, guys. Good talking to you.
Adios.